Hello, I'm Linda Ann at Studio ABC. I'm a video creator for color art at COLOURARTE.com. Today I'll be painting with vivid ultra metallics, and I have to admit I've kind of fallen in love with this product. Here I go again with another reclaimed canvas. I always have a canvas to reclaim. I was sitting beside a gentleman at an art show that was selling glass cutters, and he cut these tiles to demonstrate what his glass cutters would do, and he was also cutting mirrors and various things. So I have several pieces of this type of material that he gave me after the show, and I'm going to attach them to my canvas with E6000 glue. These are kind of heavy, so later I'm also going to use some joint compound to seal them onto the canvas. I'll let the joint compound run over the top of them. Turn the canvas over to the back and rub that to be sure that the glue adheres properly. And they're sliding, but that's okay. At least I've got the glue on them and they're going to adhere, and any glue that's left over and shiny there will disappear when I paint it. I also have this piece of glass that I sealed the edges of, and I'm going to use some joint compound. The piece of glass came from a bowl that I bought in Italy, and it broke my heart to break the bowl, so I'm going to try to use it in my art because I think it's a very pretty piece of broken glass. I had sealed the sharp edges earlier with some glue and some paper, and now I'm putting some joint compound around it to make sure that that's a nice thick area that won't come off and won't cause me to get cut on the sharp edges. I'll set those both aside and let them dry. The E6000 on the canvas is dry enough now that I can start working with some joint compound, and I'm just using this joint compound with a spoon, just dipping it out and putting it on with a spoon. I'm in no big rush to finish this, so I can give it plenty of drying time if I get it really thick. Also, when you get it thick, it gives you texture because a lot of times it will crack as it begins to dry. Sometimes my hands are my best tools. I'm spreading out the joint compound with that and pushing it up next to the tiles so that it completely seals the edges. When you work with something heavy like tile on a canvas, you kind of have to think about distributing the weight because these aren't lightweight pieces. And so I put one tile kind of in the middle and then the two tiles on the side. Also, the joint compound is going to add some weight to it. So this is not going to be a lightweight piece when I get through. I'm going to see what I can do with this piece of glass to maybe stand it up on the edge. So I'm puddling quite a bit of joint compound there, and then I can come back later with some of the E6000 if I need to. But my plan is to wait until the joint compound dries before I start working with the E6000 there. But the next morning I discovered that my artist friend with four legs, my furry little Geronimo, my cat, had decided to play on my canvas, and he turned it all upside down, knocked the glass off. So I decided I've got vivid ultra metallics to work with anyway. That's going to make the canvas beautiful. So I'm not even going to worry about putting the piece of glass back on it. The key to being a non-frustrated artist is to be willing to monitor and adjust as you go. And that may be the key to keeping from being annoyed with your cats also. So here we go. I've got joint compound all over this. It's really holding that tight to the canvas. So all I need to do is paint. I might use Radiant Gels on it. I don't know yet. I know for sure that I'm going to use Vivid. I smoothed down the roughest areas with a soft cloth that was wet, and I've already let that dry. So now I'm ready to get started painting. I'm going to dampen some of these areas of joint compound with a brush and water just to make my first layer of paint flow onto the substrate just a little easier. Sometimes the joint compound tends to kind of grab your paint as you're brushing, so this will just make it flow. I'm opting to use True Silver Vivid Ultra Metallics as the first layer on the bottom part of my canvas here where the joint compound is. So I'm just going to squirt that directly from the bottle onto the canvas, and I'll brush that out. Lately I've been mixing a lot of the silver with some of the other Vivid Ultra metallics because it is such a high, very high intensity of metallic paint, and mixing it with the other colors creates kind of a pastel in those other colors. I also think that it's going to be interesting to see the juxtaposition of a matte looking tile, a very flat color here beside the high metallic color. I'm looking forward to seeing what the contrast of these two very different materials look like beside each other. Contrast is good. And if I get something where I don't like it, I just take a little soft damp cloth and wipe it back. And I've also got a little joint compound on there that I'm kind of peeling off. I'm also careful to come down on the sides of the canvas and paint the edges because I don't always frame my work. Sometimes I paint the edges, and that is how I intend to leave it. It doesn't take long to dry, and I'm ready to add some of the African Jade Vivid Ultra Metallics on top of the True Silver. And I'm just squirting it straight from the bottle onto the canvas. I want to get a variety of thickness with this, so sometimes when there's a recessed area on my canvas, I go back and put in a little extra so that it'll fill in those puddles. It's not necessarily that I want to fill in the puddles, but I want some areas to show up more. So the puddles, as I call them, the little indented places, hold that paint and give it a little more color and a little more shine there. It's good to get up and walk away from your work once in a while and see what it needs, look at it from a distance. But I'm really enjoying this color. It looks pretty over the silver. The silver just gives it an extra little zap. And now I have gone to the lemongrass. Again, squirting it straight from the bottle onto the canvas. And I'm going to gently push that around with my brush. There's just no way you can make a mistake with this. Every single stroke makes a very pretty shimmery color. Want more depth of color? Just continue to build up the layers. Sometimes it's even hard to know when to stop. I'm making a special effort to let this paint show some of the texture of the previous materials that I had wiped my brush off on the canvas and left here. There's some texture already there, and I'm making sure that I make that show up. It becomes part of my composition. The next color that I'll be introducing to this composition is Pink Azalea. I'm just going to swirl it around on the page, and then I'm going to kind of follow that swirl, just dabbing with my brush. As I said, you can't make a mistake, so you just kind of look and see where you think it needs work and where you think it would look good if you made it a little bigger, a little thinner, a little more textured, and just keep working on it. Just play with it. That's what's so much fun, is just to play. Then if you feel like it needs to come down into some of the areas where you had put paint before, do that. You might be able to mix some of the colors together. I'm turning my canvas upside down to be able to reach this side of the canvas a little more. And my next color that I'll be introducing is Snapdragon. Now, as I'm putting these lines on here, I'm liking the lines. And I'm thinking, you know, what I really should do is go back and add some lines when I get all finished with the background paint. Also, as I put on the Snapdragon, I'm making certain that I leave a little bit of that greenish, garish color of the canvas showing through. It's a good contrast and will help your shimmer show up better if you can put shimmer beside something that is not shimmery. Most of my colors are showing up fairly well on the camera. Maybe not as much shimmer is caught in the camera, except for this one, and the shimmer, I guess, is catching the camera with the Snapdragon, and it looks more of a royal blue than it does a purple violet color. So I told you that I like the lines, so I decided to go back with the True Silver and add some line work on top And this is going to spread out because the other paint is still wet underneath it. So I expect this to kind of spread a little bit. And I'm also pulling some of the same colors down into the bottom area, which is at the top right now because I have the canvas upside down. I turn my camera off pretty soon because I think I'm all finished, and then forget to turn it back on because as I come back and look at it from a distance, I feel like it needs a little more. So I dab here and dab there and work on it a little more in areas until I feel like I've got it just like I want it. See how that paint spread? The lines look more organic now instead of like a sharp line because I put wet into wet, and that's what happens with paint. As it continues to dry, some of these colors will turn just slightly transparent so that you can see the underneath layers through it. And I find that to be a very desirable thing in the abstract art that I like to do. This actually, when it dried out, you could see some of the pink through it, and I'll show you some pictures of that in a moment. Abstract art gives me an easy way to explore composition. I like to see how things look together, how they flow together, how lines intersect, and how things work. And abstract art is a great way to do that. I'm quite pleased that I turned this canvas into something that looks like this.